Greetings and welcome everybody to the new IMUNE 365 Healthy by Choice Tuesday live event. This evening we're going to be talking about the air that we breathe, how to maximize oxygen transfer into the cells, cell vitality, energy, blood oxygen saturation levels, and various things that are going to block this very, very delicate, important process of getting oxygen from the air, which is outside us, across the membrane of the lungs and into the bloodstream, and then across the cell membrane and into the cell. So it sounds quite simple, and probably is quite simple, but it's quite an intricate process. Lots of chemical reactions, lots of enzymes required. And I think, a fundamental understanding of the sun, photosynthesis, oxygen, carbon dioxide, and, looking at common problems that are in the way of us inhaling this vital, vital nutrient, which is oxygen, the air we breathe. So the first thing we do when we are born is breathe in, and then we breathe in and out and in and out. And then the last thing we do when we die is our last breath out. So all the breaths in between are to inspire, imagine, intuition, and then to expire is to manifest. So very, very important. If we interfere with this process, we actually interfere with our own evolution, really, and our own purpose in life. And many, many people, let's get straight to it, are too stressed. So stress is a major, major, major and common problem here. What happens is we should be breathing right underneath the diaphragm to the bottom of the lungs. It should be a huge breath in and a huge breath out, a huge breath in and a huge long breath out. And when we're stressed, we tend to take short little breaths and we shallow breathe, almost like we're running from the lion. So that is a protection mechanism of the body, almost like a panting. So when we're running from that lion, we start to pant, we start producing heat, and the body's metabolic processes, all the oxygen goes to the limbs and not very much to the gut. All the parasympathetic systems calm right down, which is digestion, circulation, elimination, and the sympathetic nervous system, the adrenaline, the cortisol start pumping. And that's how most of us are living most of the day. And this is a very, very important point, is to take deep breaths. And if we don't oxygenate the heart, we're going to have, the heart's going to have to pump harder. If we don't then oxygenate the brain, we're not going to be able to think clearly, we're not going to be able to live productively, and we're going to make decisions where there are mistakes, and we could have prevented those. And so, oxygen, the breath of life, it's so, so, so critical. And last week we were talking about, the deforestation and the enormous effect that this has had on the imbalance between oxygen and carbon dioxide on the planet right now. And it's our own fault. One tree will inspire carbon dioxide and expire oxygen enough for 10 people, in a day. So they really are generous in terms of their oxygen. And if we're wiping out them out in the forests, we're going to, it's our own doing. It's our own choice as humans and humanity, and we've let it happen. So not only have species died and all the rest of it, but we've reduced the oxygen that was provided for us, on the planet. If we go back right into the beginning in evolutionary times, the freshwater green algae like a spirulina was the first ever crystallized plant-based food that was crystallized out of the nitrogen in the atmosphere. So that created spirulina, which is 90% dry weight protein, full of nitrogen. Now the spirulina, the algae, drew in the carbon dioxide and released the oxygen. So they became the first plant-based organisms responsible for oxygenating the planet. And over the eons and so on, this then made space for the fungi, the medicinal mushrooms, the reishi, the chagas, the shiitakes, maitake, cordyceps, lion's mane, etc., Coriolis, turkey tail. And they then came from out of space. The spores arrived and it was conducive to life for them. And they formed these huge, big umbrella bodies which covered the surface of the earth. And the hyphae, the roots of the fungi, went into the earth crust and started preparing it. Just about a 30, maybe 40 centimeter depth only, really, of earth crust that's available and arable for green plant life. So the medicinal mushrooms, the fungi, created the earth crust and created the base on which and from which the green plants could then grow. And then together with the sunlight, we got photosynthesis happening, where the plant draws in carbon dioxide and water and sunlight and produces glucose and oxygen. So there's a lovely symbiotic relationship between humans and plants. And, you know, they give more than there's an abundance. They give more than the people on the earth. But as I say, we've, you know, through deforestation, we've upset this balance quite considerably. So I suppose the beginning of oxygen really is the sunlight. Must be a light process where the plant undergoes photosynthesis and produces glucose in the form of encapsulated sunlight. And that energy is what we will then eat. The animals eat as well. And then we will breathe in the oxygen and eat the glucose, the food from the plants and animals where it's relevant. And then we draw in the oxygen ourselves through our nose mostly. Many people are mouth breathers, and we can talk about that but later if there's time. And as we breathe in, the air goes into the lungs, through the bronchioles, right into the alveoli. And then where there's one cell left at the membrane, the oxygen then is transferred by enzymatic process, oxygen transferase enzyme, and will then get into the blood where it's picked up by the heme and the hemoglobin, which is where we need iron to carry the oxygen. And then it's transported in the blood to every single cell in the body. So how come, you know, so many people today are, you know, walking around with a cell vitality, a cell oxygen, you know, level of 66, 70, 75, maybe 80 if you're lucky, maybe 88 if you're really lucky. And that, as I said, it's because of shallow breathing, one of the things. It could be lower oxygen content in the air, but honestly, the amount of oxygen, I think 5% of the oxygen that we breathe in, we're actually breathing out oxygen as well. We're only using 5% of what we breathe in. So unless you're really, really, really in a very, very, very smog-filled place, will that really apply? There's more than enough oxygen in the air. So we're not, can be the air pollution, but it's definitely the inhalation process, you know, and lifting the diaphragm to bring the oxygen in. And then can be a lack of iron. So, and first of all, lack of enzyme, oxygen transferase enzyme. And that's where we bring in a product like a natural microbiome reset fermented live probiotic and enzymes, because that contains both enzymes for oxygen transfer and for water transfer, just by the way. So anyway, we've got to have those enzymes. We need the proper proteins in our body to be able to produce these enzymes in the first place. And we need to make sure that the airways are clear, that there's no particulate matter lying in the way, heavy metals, cadmium, etc. No remnants from diphtheria vaccinations and things like that from when we were little. And, you know, we're not carrying things like mycoplasma, TB, any kind of pneumonia organisms in our lungs, because these organisms grow and they cover the bronchioles, alveoli, and they cover the surface of the lungs, and this then blocks the square meterage, if you like, of available mucous membrane to absorb the oxygen and transfer it into the blood. So infections, heavy metals, toxins, etc., will block also the amount of oxygen going in. And then it's the oxygen carrying capacity of the blood, the hemoglobin, and then it's also the thickness of the blood. If the blood is too thick, it's moving slowly. So it's quite easy to see that the blood, as it's moving at 50% of its pace, is only going to be delivering 50% of oxygen at any one time to the major organs, and that's terrible. Because the heart starts crying out for oxygen, the brain starts crying out, the kidneys, the lungs, the liver, the gut, and all the processes in the body. And then we start getting degrees of metabolic shutdown, where it's evidenced by high blood pressure, low blood pressure, high blood sugar levels, indigestion happening with not proper absorption, not proper metabolism. And then we start getting worms and parasites coming in to help us clean the mess because we haven't digested properly. And the muscles start getting also sore and cramping because they don't have enough oxygen. The nervous system also gets stressed. And on top of it, we have stress from outside. And we get this downward cycle of degeneration in the body. So lack of oxygen, the pH of the blood will be less than 7.4, inflammation, acidity, and those are precursors for degeneration. And then we start getting the cell not operating properly, not wanting to then absorb food and oxygen, and not releasing the waste properly, and we get deposits inside the cells, and then we don't get enough energy being produced, our life force, and then of course our battery goes flat, and again further downward spiral, our breathing becomes more labored, slow, and then of course the parasites just take over, and the body can't detoxify properly. So oxygen is important. Each breath is important for detoxification. We've got 3 minutes to breathe again. And if we don't, the toxins build up and we die. So this is the critical aspect here, is to keep the breathing, but to breathe in deeply enough and to breathe out long and completely to get the waste out. So an outward breath is equivalent to elimination, in the bathroom. It's getting rid of wastes and heavy metals and carbon dioxide, which we don't need. So these are all the things that can, really go wrong. And also, don't forget that emotionally, nearly every single client that comes in here where there's sadness and grief, the lungs and the hearts are involved. And of course, we all know that, emotions manifest in the physical. So you will see that the mom also, I had a classic person today, they don't also realize that they're coughing, but I can pick it up straight away. So I say to them, "You're coughing." And they say, "No, I'm not." So I said, "Well, you just coughed." "Oh, yeah, no, it's occasional or whatever." And then, a few minutes later, they've coughed again. And I tell them, "But you've just coughed." And then they tell me the story about how they went away with 10 other people, and the 10 people all got COVID, and they blamed it on him because he was coughing. And he said, "How could it be me?" And I said, I didn't say anything, but I keep saying to him, "You're coughing, but you're coughing." And then I find the microorganisms. And so people don't actually realize that they're coughing. One of the first things people remark on when they start on an oxygenation program, detoxification, is that the coughing stops, honestly, almost within 3 days. So that shows you that, what the detoxification effect of oxygen. And oxygen is really, 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 it's king and queen, prince, princess, and everything that you you want to name it, because it's the beginning. you can't actually absorb the photons properly from the sunlight if you don't have enough oxygen in your body either. So metabolism is not going to happen. So I think we take breathing and air for granted hugely. And, it's absolutely free. It's out there. And we've got to a point where we're sedentary. We're in front of a computer all the time. We're not moving our bodies. We're not stretching. We're not getting the circulation happening. So again, oxygen doesn't get to all the organs, and also, the waste doesn't get removed. So this is a major factor. Some people sleep with carbon dioxide absorbing plants in their home. For example, mother-in-law's tongue and those kind of plants, and purslane and aloe vera. And these plants will actually absorb carbon dioxide in your room when you're sleeping, which will, in a way oxygenate change the ratio a little bit. We like to use the Cell Vitality OxyMinerals and put the drops into a saucer. So you're getting, sort of a much higher oxygen concentration in the air when you're sleeping. And that definitely helps people who are struggling. But I think, the main important point here is that, the body having to store heavy metals and environmental toxins, heated oil, undigested protein, the body calcifying, and all of this all plays a very big part in the pH of the blood. It plays a very big part in our, obviously, acidity, alkalinity, and our inflammation levels. And, that is a downward spiral insofar as oxygen is concerned. One of the greatest attributes of yoga is not so much the poses, it's about the breathing. And that's what alkalinizes your body, your blood, and the cells and the tissues and the organs. So that whole aspect of breathing is so important. And I refer you to many of the YouTubes on the Jane Mackenzie YouTube channel. Go and have a look. We've done a lot on the alternative nostril breathing. We've done a lot on the Wim Hof breathing. And, in a way, we have to kind of retrain ourselves to breathe. And almost, I tell some of my clients, set your alarm on your cell phone to go off every hour, step outside, get in the sun, and take in 20 huge breaths and exhale 20 huge breaths. Which brings me to the point of mouth breathing. And also on the YouTube channel, we've done a lot of work, and also where dentists have got involved. And many children and adults, for that matter, too, breathe through the mouth. And, this causes a whole distortion in the bone structure. And again, you don't get the nitrous oxide being released that you get when you breathe through the nose. And that's critical for a maximum absorption of oxygen. When we eat a diet high in processed heated oils, I'm talking about sunflower oil, canola oil, which is genetically modified, margarines, butter, which is heated, dairy, all those high oil foods that are heated. Even fish oil is heated. They have to heat the muscle of the fish to get the oil out. So all of those oils are in the trans form, which is all cancer forming, which is all a free radical. And all of them, because they're heated, don't have the enzyme for digestion. All right. So the highest life force, life-giving, healing, blood thinning, cell membrane purifying brain oil is flaxseed oil. All right, it's got the highest life force, the highest potential of all the oils. And life force means electron spin. So in the outer orbits, the electrons are spinning very closely, very tightly to the proton neutron. And the tighter that spin, the higher the life force. And you get that from flaxseed oil. It must be cold pressed. Then you have a living oil, essential oil that we need. And remember, the cell membrane is a double lipid layer. And the cell membrane can get totally clogged by toxins. So something like oxygen and a flaxseed oil. Flaxseed oil will create the membrane potential across the cell membrane to encourage the oxygen and the food to cross through. The oxygen cleans both extracellularly and inside the cell and the blood and everywhere, the whole entire body. But we need that oil for the membrane potential to be minus 95 millivolts, to allow the oxygen and food to transfer through. All right, the glucose goes through via osmosis, the bigger molecules slightly differently. But we need the flaxseed oil for that. It has the potential to do that. And I mean, I've seen people who are vegan on my dark field microscope who only consume olive oil. It's lying in the blood. Something's wrong because it's not only cold pressed, it's also no light and no air. All three, heat, light, and air, will all cause the oil to go into the rancid trans form, which is the free radical form. Okay, so I'm just getting back the whole time to the flaxseed oil, and I did post earlier this week on the flaxseed oil. Okay, and the flaxseed oil has the enzymes which can convert the ALA into DHA and EPA. All right, so don't let any company misinform you on that. Okay, the companies that misinform you are the companies using heated oil, and they know that there's no that you need a digestive enzyme with their oil to help it digest. Fact. All right. So the oil is critical at the cell membrane point, but also for the immunity of the lungs, because that's where the bacteriophages live. They live in the lining of the lungs, and the oil is so important to create this lining in the lungs, and similarly in the gut, similarly in the reproductive area. So yeah, it's absolutely critical that we have oil, and flaxseed oil is the one. There's no doubt about it. So we need oxygen, we need the flaxseed oil, we need a good herbal parasite, and I refer you to the para-immune defense, a 365 healthy by choice. This is the toolkit. Everything that's needed is in the toolkit, which I've designed together to get the body right, and we do, and quickly. So you can get this para-immune defense, and it's got the 7 top antibacterial, antifungal, anti-yeasts, including anything that might be modified in any way. And together with oxygen and a really strong probiotic, which we use the Microbiome Reset, which has got 80 to 120 live strains and substrains. Bearing in mind, the most you can get in the fridge is 12. And the cold chain needs to have been kept. You can't break the cold chain. And then you need thousands and thousands and gazillions and millions of colony-forming units in order to make sure that product that was taken half an hour before you eat has multiplied sufficiently to produce the beneficial microbes in high enough concentrations. When you consume a live Microbiome Reset with enzymes, natural enzymes, the oxygen transferase and the hydrolase enzymes for water, you're consuming a whole product, and your body's microbiome can then imprint exactly as it needs to, and draw off the substrains to create the microbes you need, and use the enzymes for digestion, plus make vitamin B and K in your gut, plus serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, PEA, GABA, etc., which are all short in people. So we have to have a good microbiome, and we need the Microbiome Reset to do that, to also ward off infections, because when there's an infection and the white blood cells and everything gets called to the site, so do the beneficial organisms. They shapeshift into the opportunistic form, the aggressive form, and go and help fight the invaders. So if you have a poor microbial flora, you've got 50% of your immunity is not working for you. So you need that. I'm talking about lungs because of lung infection. So we have to wipe it out with the Microbiome Reset, a cell oxygen, a para-immune defense, and our lung cleanse and restore. So in the lung cleanse and restore, we're not only driving out the parasites, but we're also restoring the tissue. So that's very, very important product, especially to prevent infection, during infection and post-infection. I would say for about 3 to 6 months, especially those post-COVID people, you have to drive it out, the body. You know, whether you vaxxed or not, you need to drive out the parasites, because they live, they lurk. And a parasite, you don't have a temperature. It's not like a bacterial infection. It's a viral infection. So it just lurks around. And the minute there's a lot of stress and the immunity drops, you'll get a lung infection. And then you will overcome it, you'll fight it, but you're never 100%. And you're not, because your oxygen is not sitting on in the cell, is not sitting on 95. That's very different to an oximeter. All right, an oximeter will give you your oxygen level in your blood, not inside the cell. That's why those patients in hospital that got COVID, that were on a respirator, couldn't ever recover, because nothing the hospital was doing was supporting the cell membrane and getting oxygen into the cell. So no matter how hard they pumped the oxygen, the cold air, and damaged the trachea and all the rest of it, and only killed the bacteria, not the mycoplasmas and other funguses, no matter how hard they tried, no one was giving oil to create a membrane potential for oxygen transfer. They might have been checking iron levels, but still, the blood can carry the oxygen, but if that cell is not letting it through, it's not going to let it through. So if your cell vitality is 1, only 10% is going through, and this is the biggest failing. And I could see the people on my computer in the hospital literally dying, because I could see, you know, the downward spiral. And as they treated the bacteria, the mycoplasma grew, because it's not a bacteria. So did the funguses grow, because they're also not bacteria. So you got this massive imbalance and an overgrowth. And as that overgrowth covers the bronchus, bronchioles, and alveoli and causes slime, you don't get oxygen coming through. All right. So that's a very, very, very big problem. So, you know, that's really what we've got to look at. And to repair the lungs, we would use, and the cells, all the cells of the body, we would use the Replica RNA DNA, because that contains the 5 nuclear proteins. And you've all heard of CoQ10A. Well, we've got CoQ10A, adenine, guanine, thymine, cytosine, and uracil, all 5. So it's basically CoQ10 times 5. It's not just 1. It's CoQ10A, G,